Right, so ONYX on set, part one. Welcome again, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Be about a 90-minute little chat. We have a couple of interesting topics, some stories from behind the curtain or behind the set wall in this case. Yeah, so let's dig in. First, I'd like you to introduce yourself a little bit. So start with Chalky up there. I'm just going through my order on the top of the screen. I don't know how that's ordered on your side. So tell us a bit about yourself, what you do, and
yeah. Hi, morning, everyone. I am a lighting programmer. I've been working with, I started playing with lighting consoles in high school when I was about 15 in Australia. Did corporate work, did some rock and roll rental house work, bit of that stuff. Moved to the States in 2003. Was originally working at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival in Southern Oregon. And, classic story. One day I walked out the back of my house and there was a film crew there. And I got chatting with them and said, if you guys ever need another hand, pretty good at this stuff. And they called me up one day and they asked me to come and do a job with them, and it kind of took off from there. And I started working in film full time. And this is back when programming wasn't a big thing, but every now and again they would need someone to run a board. And so I just kind of went from there. And as fate would have it, one day I was on a set and the gaffer came up to me and said, what kind of console do you own? I need you to come and do a job for me in North Carolina. And I was like, I don't know, let me find out. And after doing a bunch of research, a friend of mine put me in touch with Matthias. And he said, I've got this great new console that you should try out. And I went, okay. And that was 2010. And I've been using ONYX ever since. Well, it was called,
it was an M1 back then.
It was an M1 back then, yeah.
No secret here. You can use any of the old terms. That's fine.
Yeah, so started off in 2010 on the M1 and just kind of been using the platform as it's sort of changed ever since. And it really works for me and what I do. And I really like it. And I'm happy to share it with other people.
How long you been in the States now? We're both foreigners that came in here.
2003, so 17 years or something.
Yeah, same for me. I came in 2002.
Yeah. And being from Oz, I was, I sort of cut my teeth on, Hog 1Ks and Hog 500s and the old Jans 408s and 416s and all that sort of stuff. And when I was working at OSF, they were an ETC house. Over the years, I've used Avos and I've used Horizon and I've used a whole bunch of different, it was always a case of, here's the board you'll be using today. Because I was living in Portland at the time, Portland was a very much Martin town. Hollywood Lights had some Maxis and, they then went on and bought a bunch of M1s and M2Gos and stuff. And, there was one guy in town that had an MA and one guy that had a Hog 2 and everyone else had, Martin consoles. So there was a really good user base there, which, made it much easier to sort of work amongst ourselves, so to speak.
Great. Right. Phil, welcome to our little thing. You're also in LA. We know each other for a long time as well. So
thank you.
A bit of a background about you.
Yeah, funny. So I started my career in theater, actually, back in the Midwest. My folks were in the industry. And so I grew up in a theatrical environment. We moved out to LA late 70s. And then my folks got out of theater and went into film and TV and kind of followed in their footsteps. And I was involved with lighting design and production design early on. That was my interest in live event work. And same with Chalky, did a bunch of corporate events. I've done commercials, I've done film, I've done TV, kind of run the whole gamut. There were a couple of years there where I was doing theme park installations and things of that nature. And gosh, Matthias and I met back, I think it was late 90s. I was doing, I was an associate designer at Light Switch. And
It was early 2000s.
yeah, early
Kind of like
2000s. And
E3, kind of those like big.
yeah,
shows.
the first show, I was on a Maxis actually, for the Chicago Auto Show. And I was doing some programming for John
Auto
Featherstone.
shows.
Yeah, and I think that was my first. I think that was my first dive into what was pre-ONYX at the time. It was Maxis, which turned into M1 and M6, and now is ONYX. I've currently, over the last few years, jumped back into doing more local Union 728 work here in LA. I've programmed some stuff on Hell's Kitchen, which is where Chalky and I met. I day play on Ninja Warrior every once in a while. Did some work the last 2 seasons on Holy Moly. I've done, I did Hyperdrive. I was one of 4 programmers on the Netflix show
That was,
Hyperdrive.
Ed Motz, right? Did that one?
Yes, that was Ed's show, and he brought me in as one of 4 programmers because it was a huge, immense show that we were doing. It was a driving show in Rochester, New York, a couple summers ago. Done some programming on Rhythm and Flow for those guys, and just finished up a Netflix show called, well, the working title was Black Excellence. The production title now is #BlackAF. I don't think we can cuss, so I won't say as fudge. And right before COVID hit, I was doing a pilot for Apple TV, which is still under NDA, so I can't even give the title of what that was. But here I am, and like Chalky, I own a couple of different systems. I've got 4 complete systems that I can do anywhere from location work to soundstage work, with networking and all of that kind of stuff. And
Yeah,
I've got a little video
in a bit.
Yeah, I've got a little video later on I could play that kind of shows a little bit of what my gear is about and all that. But that's kind of me. That's my background.
All right, well, thanks for joining us here. And then we got on the other end of the world from LA, we got Tommy out there. So tell us a bit about yourself, Tommy.
Hey, how's it going? Tommy Sullivan. I IATSE 491 dimmer board operator in North Carolina. Actually started, I guess, really getting into dimmer boards when Chalky came to North Carolina. It was the same show he was doing. I was a rigging electrician on the show, and first kind of experience with a dimmer console in the film business. I'd done some before, theater projects and whatnot, but then Chalky comes in with his board and can control everything, and definitely sparked my interest. So did a little programming, helping him out with an expressions board, kind of just flashing everything, making sure it worked. And from there, I guess dimmer boards became more of a standard in shows. I started doing a TV series called Homeland. But then in a couple years ago, got into ONYX, got a phone call from Chalky, said, "Hey mate, you need to try out this board." He found out I was doing a pretty big show in Wilmington called Swamp Thing, and it was definitely beyond what I was able to control with what I had before that. So immediately dove in, bought a console, and I've kind of been doing it ever since. So did Swamp Thing with it, which was, I think we did 10 episodes before it got canceled. And then on to Reprisal, which is a TV show for Hulu. It had a bunch of movers and Asteras and just a very extravagant sets. And a couple other little features and pilots and whatnot in between. But that's pretty much it. And I have a couple consoles now, built up a package. that's very scalable for whatever we're doing.
Great. Well, thanks, Tommy. And thanks really to all three of us, you there to join us and agreeing to doing this. I see Chalky keeps changing his background, which is great. He's just promoting all these different shows he worked on.
I just feel like being in Hawaii right now.
That's a good one. So let's start by talking about the workflow on a movie set, because it is a bit different, and there's going to be people on here that maybe don't know, how your daily work goes, and what makes it different from a theatrical show or from a music tour or something. So each of you can maybe give a little input about it.
Go ahead, Phil.
Well, for me, I think the biggest change from doing live events, moving into film and TV is fixture management. Usually you're getting a plot on a live show and you input everything and you do your patch sheets and you patch your console and you do your groups and you kind of set it and forget it in a lot of ways. For TV, it's a lot different because you're always swapping fixtures out. You're always having a new batch of fixtures to have to control. You may be on a stage that has a plot and that has some ground fixtures, and that's one way of setting up your show, setting up your fixtures. And then you've got a truck package because you've got different sets of fixtures that go with you when you're on the road that you're not always using on the soundstage. So you're having to patch and figure out modes and figure out patching for all of the new fixtures that you're going to be playing with. A lot of times you don't even know until you show up, day of location. We see everything from airy sky panels to Astera tubes to light mats to rat pack dimmers. We do a lot of L series Fresnels, LED Fresnels from Airy. But each one of those, obviously brings with it its own challenge because there's so many different modes that you can run fixtures in nowadays. Taking control of them can be quite challenging, especially when you're on the gun, when you're running and gunning, because production won't wait for you. If the DP calls for a light and the gaffer sets it and you don't have control over it, holds everything up. So you've got to be able to patch things quickly and be able to organize and do a lot of math when you're going from show to show. And we're not writing as many cues as much these days on film sets unless you're doing some sort of a gag. Generally it's you set a shot and you write a cue and that sits for a little while, and then you're done with that shot. You move on to the next setup and you change a couple of levels. You're kind of always setting levels, not really locking cues into the board so much. But it's definitely a different workflow than live event.
I had a friend that once described working in the film industry as hours of sheer boredom interspersed with moments of sheer panic. And there's some truth in that, coming from a theater background as well. If, like normally in a theater, you'll rehearse it, you'll tech it, you'll do the show, and then it's just go, cue list. What we do is very similar dissimilar in the fact that every shot is a different lighting setup. Every time they move the camera, it's a different lighting setup. And so the easiest way that I can explain it to anyone that's from a theater or live event background, it's like being in tech 14 hours a day for 5 days a week. It's a very different workflow. It's very quick. You have to be able to react very quickly. And one of the things I like about the platform is it gives me the flexibility to do that. But it's all about how you set up your show, how you patch things, how you build your presets, how you do your layouts, how you set up your 2D plans. Like the actual programming of the show can be difficult, but it's usually most of my work goes into how I set up my show file to give me that instant access to stuff. Building effects macros and pre-building some cue stuff that it's like, I'm always going to need a cop light effect or a lightning effect, and so I'll build a bunch of that stuff and have it parked in my presets or in my cue list directory, and then I can just drag it in and use it whenever I need it.
Yeah, I said I like that is a good description to say it's like in tech all day because you build yourself like a space to place things quickly. If somebody's always shouting at you over the radio and saying bring something in. Tommy, on your end there, I don't know, maybe North Carolina, all different. Everybody is planned all day.
Pretty much the exact same. So yeah, we're programming basically all day. I'm keeping one. Sorry, muted my phone, but not the laptop. So we are basically keeping the queue list running all day and just constantly adding to it and letting it track through. Sorry. So yeah, basically it's just one queue list that we just keep building upon all day, and that's kind of the way that I do it, and I think you guys do it the same way. And then when we have effects and whatnot, then we're building different queues and using those as needed. But
when we talked yesterday, when we prepped this, you talked a bit about the sort of fixture arrangements you do. You do have like a certain style of, your hundreds and 1000s, how you lay that out. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, so I do a kind of numbering system that just helps me keep track of things in my head. And a lot of that is done with how I number different fixtures. Let me try to figure out here how to do the screen share. Does that bring it up? Oh no, here we go. So I have numbering here where the 1000th digit in a lot of my fixtures indicates the universe, just so it's easy for me to remember. So I keep all my Astera stuff in the 1000 range because it's all in universe 1. All my sky panels are in the 2000 range because it's universe 2, and so on. So it kind of helps me just knowing when somebody calls out a fixture number, the gaffer or another electrician calls out a number, I know right offhand what that number is. If it's 170 or 1601, I know that's a helio. So just doing little things like that will help you remember and keep track of what's going in and what's happening on set without actually, being right on set, watching everything. So little tricks like that are beneficial, will help you out in the long run.
Okay, that's it is interesting. I like that screen that you shared there. It's very different. You probably never see that like that on a theatrical plot. It's just a very different way of working.
So yeah, that's just something that gives me pictures of everything, so I know, easily find stuff on my screen.
Sharky, how do you lay out your fixture IDs and groups? What's like you do?
I kind of do it more like an old school, like rock and roll guy would do. In the old days, it was 501 was Mac 500 number 1, 601 was Mac 600 number 1, and so on and so forth. So I tend to do a thing. Usually, what I do is I'll leave the first universe open. So 1 through 500 will just be open dimmer channels. I usually start my sky panels at 601 because it's S60 number 1, and I'll just if I've got 18 on a truss, that'll be 601 through 618. The next truss is 621 through whatever, 651. I kind of do it that way. I always kind of keep, with the S360s, I always keep 3601 through whatever open just for those. And then on other stages or whatever, I'll just start with a random number. So stage number 1 will start at 1001. Stage number 2 will start at 2001. It kind of depends on the show and the size and the scope of it. But I try and keep some things consistent. It makes it easy for the guys on set, and part of my job is to make their job easier so that the communication flow is better and so that there's less confusion. So that's kind of how I do it.
Phil, so what's your
Yeah, I'm a little bit of both schools there. I do a little bit of all that. I too usually keep Universe One completely open for all conventional dimming, um, and then I'll build universes from that depending on where the scope of our work is going to be. If we're going to be on a sound stage for most of our shoot, then I'll start by numbering fixture types. So yeah, so all my S30s will be a range of numbers. All my S60s will be a range of numbers. My Astera tubes will be a range of numbers. I don't always have the luxury of putting each fixture type into its own universe because a lot of the times when we rig on stage or when we rig on location, we've got to keep things local. So we've got multiple different, multiple fixture types in various universes. I rely heavily on 2D plots, which actually, here, let me see if I can call up my screen. My screen sharing, I could show you one of my...
Yeah, actually, that question just came in. How do you deal with
So
gaffer saying, I need that light in that corner without actually telling you the number?
Let's take a look at this.
Yeah.
Let's see, can you guys see that one?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a set from one of my recent shows, Netflix show. This was the house that we were using. This particular layout down here is all the light boxes, which were all S60s up in flyable rigs with soft boxes that we created. So I was able to jump in and kind of lay out where all of those soft boxes were. Then I've got another layer that's doing all my 360s and some image 85s that were lighting Sykes around the room. There were some 12K Fresnels out here that I had. And then once we moved inside, then I've got all of my down cans, all of my practicals in here, which are all numbered accordingly. So the gaffer or the electrician could be out on set and look up into the rig and say, hey, we need to bring up down can number 29. And a lot of this stuff was 2-ford and 3-ford, but it was labeled on the other end of the set as well as here on my plot. So we could all kind of keep track of range of fixtures and all of that. So I rely pretty heavily on 2D layouts, which is great in ONYX because they lay out really easily. You can import different types of backgrounds depending on what it is that the file types that you're getting from your production designers and such. But this for me really helps me, narrow everything down. So I know exactly where everything is on set.
I also see that on some of them you activated the intensity to show as well, which I guess is helpful. People call out what level is this at.
Yes, a lot of times when the gaffer's standing next to the DP at the monitor, they'll say, hey, what intensity is channel such and such at? Because they may want to boost it up or down. So I find it helpful to be able to have all those readouts immediately available so I don't have to punch it into the programmer and, look at each individual channel. It's just kind of a time saver for me.
I've been doing that a lot as well because it's much easier than trying to scroll through your live output screen or dump it into the programmer. It's right in front of you. It's what you're currently working on. Oh, it's 205s at 100. Yeah, cool. Awesome. It's actually really fun. Like if the gaffer's standing right next to you and he's like, is that at 100? You're just like, yeah, look at that. There it is. Oh, yeah, okay.
There it is. Exactly.
Okay. No, that's
the other thing that I really like about the 2D plan is the fact that if you're doing something with moving lights or you can actually see the beams moving on the screen. And that's helpful because what a lot of guys might not understand is that quite often as a film programmer, you can't see the set. You're in a box somewhere or you're outside the building that they're shooting in. You can't always have line of sight and you can't always get a video feed. And so being able to see what the beam of your moving light or what color's actually coming out of your sky panel on the 2D plane is really helpful because it gives you that visual reference. And the gaffer might say, oh, pan it left, and you can't actually see the fixture, so you're like, oh yeah, it's going left. It's really helpful if you're doing like a big set with a bunch of movers and you have no visual reference and you can kind of see what your programming is roughly going to look like. It's a handy previs tool a bit as well if you don't have a full visualizer, because you can actually see what the beams are going to do, even if it's only in an overhead 2D view. So that part of it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tommy, you also said you have a very interesting way how you use a 2D plan. Like you talked about Google a little bit there. Can you talk about that?
So, I mean, obviously I have, let me get the screen share back up here. So obviously I have, did it come up? There we go.
Yep, there it is.
All right, so I use this page, but also for exterior locations, I've figured out you can import Google images into this, which gives you helpful for when you're doing huge exterior locations. So this was a boardwalk that we actually didn't get to shoot because of the coronavirus. It was scheduled for a Thursday and we shut down on a Monday. But this was what our rig was going to look like. And so I can pan around here. I've got my condors with 360s in them, all the lights along the boardwalk, street lights, things on Ferris wheels and merry-go-rounds. And it helps for, the gaffer can come over to my board and, oh yeah, these lights here, let's kill those. Just point at stuff and, or count, give me the fifth one from the north at full. And so that helps me to be able to look at it and see what I'm doing. And through Google, then you can also do off perspective images. So like the pier, you can get a better perspective rather than just a straight down look. So it makes it really easy to add stuff there, which is always fun and interesting to walk by and see. And you never believe how many people ask me, oh my God, is that live? But yeah, it's a helpful.
Actually, I never thought about taking a picture of a venue and of an area and doing this, but it's a very clever idea. And ONYX is pretty straightforward. You just import the background picture and you start spreading your pixels out. And I guess it's all it's like a reference tool. It's not about being super perfect and accurate. It's just knowing where something is in relationship to each other.
Yeah, it's about speed. I mean, that's what we have to deal with every day. Like time is money in a sense that you don't understand if you've never been on a film set. So to be able to import something like that really quickly and then just throw a bunch of fixtures on it is part of what makes this really powerful. So it's pretty cool.
And because we're moving, so quickly, like these guys were saying, from location to location, number and fixture recall is pretty much out the window, because there's a lot of times where, we don't even have time to put a cheat sheet together. We don't have time to put a patch sheet together. We're scribbling stuff on, gaff tape and on, the backs of call sheets, here, this is what this number is. This is what that number is. So it really falls on the programmer. I would venture to say 95% of the time to know what all of these numbers are and to be able to call things and recall things quickly, because, the gaffer's never going to have time to learn all those fixture numbers. And he honestly doesn't care, because he's worried about setting the shot up for the DP. So that 360 at the end of the pier, camera right, turn that one on, put that in blue. Okay, well, that fixture, as a programmer, you got to know what numbers to call up. So it really falls on us to be able to have all of these quick shortcuts and tools to be able to render that stuff back quickly.
Something else that you mentioned yesterday to me is that you sometimes tend to overpatch. I think it was Chalky mentioned that, right?
Yeah, I mean, you never quite know what's going to happen on any given day. I mean, we've all had the situation where you walked in and they're like, oh, we got another 50 sky panels today. Okay, great. And so part of that is being able to just go, cool, I can make that happen for you. That's the job. And so, having it would be what my lighting lecturer at university called ghosts. you put a bunch of ghosts in the plot, and so you've got, say I've got 50 sky panels up in universe 200 patched, cloned, and ready to go. I can just transfer them into whatever universe I want, change the ID numbers to what I want, and they're good to go. And so I don't always do that, but with my show files, I create what I call a master fixture, and I park a bunch of stuff up in universe 255 and 254. And that might be, sky panel in mode 25. I've already built all the groups and all the presets. And so, if I find out I've got to do, a bunch of poor man's or something one day with a bunch of, S60s, it's like I'll just patch in a bunch and then clone them from my master fixture, and all my groups and all my presets and stuff, or any existing queues that I built specifically for those fixtures, ready to go. It just makes it really, really fast.
Yeah, I do exactly the same when I'm coming into a show for the first time. If I know on this soundstage they're going to have 20 of one fixture type, I'm going to patch 40. And when I build all of my palettes and build all my presets for color and intensity and all of that, I will include all of those fixtures. And even though maybe 5 or 6 of them only ever get patched for one day, we may end up, including those on another location down the road. And so for me, it's easy to just knock those into the patch and then not have to rewrite or update any of my palettes that I've already written, because they're already there. And you don't necessarily have to put all of those fixtures. You don't have to give them DMX assignments. You can just give them fixture IDs and patch them later on down the road into whatever universe you need to. It's not like, you've got to eat up all of your number space in your universes. You can just give them all fixture IDs, record your palettes and your groups as necessary, and then patch at a later date. And it saves a lot of time, and it saves you from, again, having to go back and update presets and update CTO palettes and CTB palettes and all that kind of stuff, because you've already done it at the beginning of your show.
Yeah, what's nice, I guess, with ONYX is that it's pretty generous on universe counts. So you're not really restricted. Like with the PC version, you have like 128, and NX4 or 2, you get 64 universes without, often you may have only 1 or 2 fixtures on there, and it's just convenient to be able to distribute universes, maybe, by locations. You can say, well, all the 60s are over there and all the 30s are in this room. And you just can be, you can be pretty quite wasteful, I guess, where other platforms where you need like a lot of boxes extra, that isn't, quite as easy.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the big advantages. I mean, I think when I originally got my M1, it came with 12 universes, and then we jumped to 32, and we thought that was huge. Mm-hmm. Now it's, even not doing a lot of pixel work, it's easy to get into the 20, 30, 40 universe range.
With LED fixtures now, definitely they eat up, a lot of
I mean, an S360 in pixel mode is 193 channels per fixture. Yeah. So you get 2 of them in a universe.
Well, and the same with the Astera tubes. You get a Titan running in full pixel mode with all the bells and whistles. It's 128 channels per fixture, and you've got a whole grid of them. It goes quick.
Yeah. So like having that large universe count is, well, for me, it was a huge selling point, because it's like I don't need to buy external processors. I don't need to buy DP racks. I don't need any of that stuff. I can just hook my console into any network node system and be able to control everything. I think the most I've done is about 40, 45 universes, and no problem.
All right.
Yeah, no problem.
So as we talked about, setting up fixture management, some advice from your end on, what modes fixtures to put in. If I ask 100 people, I get 100 opinions on what fixture modes to put something in with, like S60, which is a very popular product in your business. I mean, there's so many combinations. Some of the chroma key stuff has a bazillion different ways you can set it up. Like, what's your go-to modes, and how do you, what's important for you to have?
God, that's the can of worms, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it is, because it really falls under the DP and the gaffer's preferences, because of what they think they're going to be doing with those fixture types. Obviously, as a programmer, the fewer channels we have to manipulate, the happier we are, because we don't have to type in all the points and all of that kind of stuff. But 9 times out of 10, DPs and gaffers, they don't want to chance it because they don't necessarily know what they're going to do until they show up on set. So we patch everything in, you know, in full pixel mode, which again starts eating up a lot of channels. So that comes back to when you're first setting your show file up, you know, leaving holes, leaving blocks, you know, leaving universes open so that when you do start expanding out, you're not running out of room. And it really all comes down to the DP and the gaffer as to what they want to do with the fixtures and how they want to run them.
Yeah. One thing I do, I'm a big fan of mode 6 in the sky panel because it gives you a lot of flexibility as far as color temperature control and, you know, the ability to blend in RGB and do all that sort of stuff. You know, some guys love HSI, some guys love XY, whatever. I mean, this is what I found to be most flexible for me. Having said that, you know, you get in a situation, you've got everything patched in mode 6, and then the DP wants something from gel mode. So something that I always do is I use the channel, the offset patch feature when I'm patching my fixtures. And I'll, you know, I think I use a 21 or 22 channel offset so that I can
gaps that way.
I leave gaps in the patch so that I can go, today they're in M6, tomorrow I need them in effects mode, the next day I might need them in gel mode, and I can just change the fixture type without having to repatch and reassign. You just have to change the mode in the fixture. You don't have to readdress it. So that's just a little time-saving tip. And that's actually happened to me. And it was like, oh, okay, cool. We just do this. And it was, you know, plug in your DMX tester and just go into the fixtures and change the mode from the ground. And we were up and running in about 5 minutes. So, you know, again, it's about, you have to really think about how you set up your show file to begin with to give you that flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
Tommy, I know you own actually a couple of, like, you know, stereos and some fixtures in your trailer there. So, like, what's your preferred way of, you know, setting these things up?
So I typically will, I haven't been leaving gaps in my patch as much as probably I should. I tend to stick with mode 6 on sky panels and stay there. If I do need to do pixel stuff, it's I'll just make a new universe with those and kind of swap it over. We don't do as much big scale pixels with the sky panels. A lot of our pixel stuff goes with the stereo tubes, which do tend to eat up a lot of universes. I think you can get 5 tubes or so, or 4 to 5 tubes in full pixel mode on a universe. Mm-hmm. So I keep a case or 2 of pixeled tubes and just kind of, they're numbered and they're kept aside. So when we need to pixel something, yeah, we'll pull those out and use them. Otherwise, stuff stays in the same mode, which with the tubes is a CCT mode that, in RGB. So I can basically do anything that I can do with the sky panels with them and kind of color match them. Although they don't quite match up perfect for the same RGB values. You can go in there and set presets to make sure that, you know, there's certain colors that the gaffer DP wants all the time, like 651, high sodiums, the urban vapors, that you get a feel for what the DP is going to want early on, and build those profiles or presets for that.
Do you find that ONYX helps you accessing those fixtures better than other consoles out there? Like the way the programming interface is done or the way the fixture profiles are done, you know, so the quality of those fixture profiles good? You know, does it give you everything that you need?
Big shout out to OFA. I would argue the point that we probably have the best fixture profile support in the industry, to the point that, you know, like the way that film lighting manufacturers create their fixtures, you know, a lot of it's built in someone's backyard and then it becomes the industry standard and then you're playing catch up. It's quite often that someone throws you a fixture one day that you've never heard of, never seen, there's no manual and you've got to work it out. And, you know, being able to go in and create your own profiles is really good, but the work that OFA does is just, you know, like second to none. I mean, it's really cool. He'll, you know, I'll ask him for a profile, he'll do it. And then I'm like, oh, can you do this, and this to it? And he's like, yeah, no worries, man. And he just makes it work. It's awesome.
Yeah, and not only the profiles, but having all the presets in there, especially for color range on a lot of the sky panel stuff and the light mats. We in ONYX world, you know, when you click on your color temperature menu, you get everything from 2900 all the way up to 10K in 100-degree increments. Whereas if you're on an MA, I think in a hog, I haven't been on a hog in a while. I don't know if they've updated their stuff, but you really only get the low and the high, and then you have to go through and kind of dial in the mid range. So if the DP says, you know, let me see that sky panel in 5600 on an MA, you have to start at one end of the spectrum and kind of dial it in, and then you've got to have somebody at the other end with the meter. Whereas on ONYX, you've got all of those individual color temp presets in there, which is great because you can warm it up and cool it off as needed within, you know, 100-degree increments. And I think it's pretty much that way on every fixture profile that at least that I've seen thus far, which is just, it just makes everything so much easier.
Tommy, like maybe share your screen again there where you had some patch. Maybe just have a quick look for people that haven't seen that, how the, you know, fixture profile looks for maybe like a sky panel, pretty much the most popular fixture out there at the moment.
I think they've sold like 65,000 of them or something.
So
yeah, toggle up your.
Yeah, I use this, you know, in ONYX, for people that are not familiar with that, you have this little pop-up on the right. That's basically you can compress the fixture channels down to just a little bar, but then you have a little arrow on the bottom right, and that then expands it all. You can even click the extra arrow on the top there above intensity, and then you get this large field. When you click the slider on the bottom left, and then you have there you go. You get like this whole grid, and then our library developer takes the time to all shade them properly.
Now, one thing that is not always accurate is your gels.
These are very generic. They're not calibrated per fixture type. They're just values. So
I am a big fan of clear, though. I run clear gel on most all my sky panels.
Right, so yeah, you have the color temperature control on the right there, which was Phil was referencing. And you just click
here. Yeah, you've got that, and then here I've got this window here that I can call up. Give me a second. Let me see where I can find it here.
I mean,
This was the one I was talking about, and this is great because it gives you everything from 2800 Kelvin all the way up to 10,000, which on an MA console or any other console, you're only going to have a couple of boxes up here, and it's going to say cool and warm, and then you've got to be able to dial in manually, you know, what those temperatures want to be. Yep. Whereas here, you just click on it, and it's kind of a, you know, it's kind of a done deal, which is awesome.
Good example. Yeah, obviously that's only going to be as good as information we get from the manufacturer. There is definitely some garage build stuff where this is like faxed PDF that's scanned 5 times floating around the industry, and you're like, this is how it has to be, and then you try to make a fixture profile out of this. Right. Well, people have their own tables that they made of where they know this, you know, they measured that all out, every DMX value, and they measured out the color temperature, and then we'll try to build something out of that.
I think I vividly remember the time I sent over the data sheets for the gel mode of the ARRI S60. You know, in gel mode, there's a couple of hundred gel presets that you can, you know, dial up at the push of a button. I was like, can you put this into the profile? And I think I heard the scream from Los Angeles. it was a big ask, but he did it, and it just makes it life super easy.
Okay. Couple of things that ONYX also, you know, does is, you know, how it handles part fixtures, cloning, and grouping. Maybe you can talk about that a little bit. You know, because that's part of, you know, fixture modes, fixture profiles. It all is related to each other. How you know, how fast can you talk to the light? Tommy, maybe start there.
I'm sorry. I was
you know, talk about like the part fixtures, you know, points at different cells, you know, cloning and grouping of fixtures like every third, you know, how do you utilize something like that?
So really, I don't get into that as much unless it's a really big stage build where I've got a ton of sky panels around the tops of the walls. And so basically you're just making groups of every other, every third. But typically for what I've been doing, it's more sections than it is every other, like it used to be with space lights and things like that. So it hasn't been as handy for me, but it does have its benefits on a stage.
Yeah.
It used to be when we were doing a lot more stuff with tungsten fixtures, particularly back in the days, you know, when you would have a couple of hundred space lights or something like that. I used to find that grouping tools was a really powerful tool for, you know, gaffer suddenly wants all of the space lights instead of, you know, 6 bulbs at 100, he wants 2 bulbs at 100. So we'll just select everything, go into grouping tools, go every 6, and then just, you know, at full, next at 0, next at 0, next at 0, next at 0 was a really quick way of, you know, grouping tools was really powerful for selecting a lot of fixtures. It's also good now if you're doing stuff with, you know, building effects macros for effects. I mean, this is going to sound crazy, but one of the hardest things to do in film is to build a good fire effect, because every gaffer's got some little magic box that they just plug lights into and push a couple of buttons and it builds the perfect fire effect. And then it's like, oh, can you make that happen on a console? And it's actually quite a hard thing to do, but I've kind of found that, you know, if you're doing that with dimmers and using grouping tools and then applying different effects makes that actually quite simple. You know, because you can, one of the things I love about the console is with the effects engine, everything's direct parameters. So it's really easy to dial things in quickly. And grouping tools is a powerful tool in combination with the effects engine to build those kind of effects. You know, pretty much within a couple of minutes to achieve what you're trying to achieve. Knowing that half the time the information you're getting isn't always fabulous. So.
Right. And for me, I've been using Dylos more now actually to achieve a lot of those effects. Now, obviously incandescence, that doesn't work because Dylos, you know, only spits out RGB.
No, actually it does do intensities. If you have a fixture that's only intensity,
okay,
it'll actually control dimmers.
it will do that. Okay. Yeah. Well, good to know. I didn't know if that update had been made yet, because I know we were having issues with that at one point, but I'm finding that for me is becoming a huge time saver on set, because now I just set my regions around the grid of whatever lights I'm trying to control. And especially in RGB effects, finding those fire effects, finding those things, it just makes manipulating all of that stuff much more intuitive now. And it's much more, it's natural, you know, it doesn't look like an effect because
organic,
it's, you know,
is usually what I
exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
That may be a good one to show next week on a little sort of practical session, you know, do like what you call the poor man's setup, you know, what used to be flags and people waving around to get the, you know, street light chasing by or a neon sign, you know, that would be probably a good example to showcase how to set that up quickly.
Yeah. For anyone that doesn't understand the terminology, poor man's process is a way to, for example, like someone driving in a car down the street. If you don't want to actually go out and film someone in a car, you do it on a soundstage in front of a green screen. Although these days it's becoming more and more doing that in front of video screens. So, and then filming through the car, through the person to the video screen. And so creating lighting effects in that environment is its own set of challenges, but fun.
Yeah, and in case, you know, there's a lot of people that probably don't know, Dylos is the pixel engine that we added to the ONYX platform. It's been in beta since like late fall, and it just started hitting now. Got ready now that everything's shut down.
Yeah, exactly.
Unfortunately. But yeah, that's, you know, it's very well suited for this environment, because any sort of fire effect, waterfall, kind of anything you can want to do that's organic and doesn't look like an effect chasing around. That's really well suited for that, because you just change the video or you manipulate it. Like, it has a lot of parameters for this. Great. Can you talk about cloning a little bit? You know, and you come in with your master show file, you know, then you patch the lights, and you use the cloning features, I guess, of the desk as well.
Mm-hmm. Cloning is actually one of my favorite tools in the console. One of the things that Phil talked about was the way that the profiles are built, particularly for fixtures with color temperature control, because the thing to remember is the most important color in film lighting is white, and the degree of white that you're using. So having that functionality really good in the console makes it really easy to build presets, which then makes it really easy to have fully, you know, like I said, you add 50 fixtures on the day. You don't want to have to rebuild all those presets for all those fixtures. You just clone your master fixture and you're ready to go. So cloning is a huge part of my workflow and the way that I build my show files that makes it very quick and efficient. It's actually one of my favorite features about the console.
Yeah, because I think cloning, when you think of cloning traditionally, especially for, you know, when you're on the road and doing tours, you would you're going from city to city. Not every if you're not carrying a touring package with you, some cities would have one type of fixture, and another city would have another type of fixture, but you built your show using, say, VL 3500s. So in my experience, the cloning feature was always, okay, we'll take the parameters of what a 3500 is, and now you're using a Viper, so it's going to take the RGB values from the 3500 and transpose those over into a Viper. Well, sometimes they don't always match up, because obviously fixture profiles are completely different. In film and TV world, cloning, we do still do a little bit of that, but from what Chalky's talking about, it's more helpful for us to be able to take, you know, an existing 360 and clone that over into another 360 that maybe necessarily hasn't been put into the patch yet. And so using it among those terms, it's a huge time saver and very powerful.
Great.
Yeah.
When we started, you know, I was asked a bit like, how is setting up for a movie set or TV set different than, you know, doing a theater or like a music production. And I know you have different ways how you like lay out your playbacks. You know, like certain sort of way of doing it. Tommy, what's your sort of typical layout? Like, how do you arrange your playbacks to access things quickly?
Well, I do it with that screen that I showed you, my basic 2D plan. That's basically everything. I keep everything on that's going to come in, that's called for on the day. It's a lot of our stuff that's on our carts. I use these little wireless DMX modules that we go ahead and prep and put on basically everything we have that's on our truck. And we pair stuff at CMRX. Just so when it's called for, I mean, there's no waiting. It gets grabbed off the cart, the number gets called out, and it runs in the set as I'm turning it on. Especially the stereotubes are cool because you see them light up before they even go in the set. The guy's walking across the yard with it.
Right.
But for me, I use this page is always up on my screen. And then for set builds, it's the standard 2D plans from the art department, and lights laid out on it.
How do you lay out your playback specifically, though? You just have like one fader that just runs your scene, that's it? You just keep merging stuff into that one queue, or do you have multiple queues next to each other for different
So I do
regions?
a queue basically for every day, a queue list for every day. And then, you know, you can name that queue list, what day it was, and then you can name the scene number, each queue in that queue list as the scene numbers. And so it becomes helpful for down the road, you know, you're 2 months into a show and, hey, remember day 2? We need to go back and reshoot this scene. So you can go back and pull up, and even though it may not be the same lights, you can go in there and say, oh, okay, we were using a lot of orange colors, or we were using because it's a lot of times it's just an insert that's owed that they're going to do in another corner of the stage that wasn't that real set.
Right.
And then I've got my other cues will be just effects and lightning and things like that I can call back real quick if need be. But I try to keep each page as being a day. So in that, I can go through and find that cue list that would be the right day, and then I can say, oh, well, also I had 2 or 3 overrides that were lightning, and so we must have been doing lightning that day. And so each page becomes a day and it becomes organized that way.
Right.
Phil, what's your best way to
I do something very similar. One of the things that I really dig about ONYX too is having priorities. Priorities I use every day on set. I'll build, if we're on, let's say we're on a soundstage, I'll build a fader that's everything at full for our circuit check, right? So when we come in the morning, we'll run that fader up. It'll turn everything on set on at full or at 50 or whatever, so that we can walk around and check for burnouts and things of that nature. Then in my next fader, I'll do a slightly higher priority, and that will have actual levels built in. So maybe it'll take the space lights to 70. It'll take the S360s on the psych to say 50. It'll adjust practical levels, within the living room or the bedroom or whatever the set is. And that way then I can build as I go. So my first fader is always a base look, and it's basically everything at full at 100%. And then from there, then I'll prioritize faders after that. Sometimes you'll have a day look, sometimes you'll have a night look. And as you go up your fader stack, your priorities increase. And then there'll be overrides where, like he was saying, it might be a lightning effect, or it might be a, police siren, or it could be anything. But I try to prioritize all of that as I go down my fader stack. When we were on Hell's Kitchen, actually, that was huge.
Yeah, it was huge.
Because each fader, as you brought it up, would put us into a different state on set. And there were actual, sometimes there were on-camera gags where we'd have to take the set to red, or we'd have to take the set to blue, or we'd bring up the kitchen in the background while the contestants, were talking with Gordon in the dining room. So being able to set priorities on all the individual faders and cue lists is huge, and it does play tricks in your head sometimes, because you do kind of have to know where you are in the scope of things. But I find it a lot easier to prioritize than to have to go and take hard values and throw them into a queue, because say the next queue down the road, you may have something that needs to change. And if you've got hard values set in your fader, it's not going to do anything. And we were talking a little bit on the prep call yesterday about tracking versus queue only. I generally have tracking on all the time. And there are points in my queue list where I only want to record this level in this queue. I don't want it to track any further than where I'm at in the show. And having that queue only button in the record prompt really makes it easy to do that. And like Tommy was saying, I label each cue as a setup or as a scene, and then I do a fader per day, and then I do banks per location. So if we're on stage 1 at Universal, I've got a bank for that. Then if we move to stage 23 over at Raleigh, I have a different bank for that, so that I'm kind of keeping all of those things separate. And then I'm really organizing the cue list to know exactly where we are at any given moment. So if we do have to go back and do a reshoot, or we have to reestablish a look, you know, the DP really liked what we shot on episode 103. Can we start with that? I can go back in my cue list reference and bring up that exact set of levels. And it's a great place to start.
Do you use inhibitives at all, actually? Inhibitives?
I do, and I think the other guys will tell you this too, because a lot of the Astera tubes are battery life, right? I'll write an inhib that'll take all the Asteras to 0 when we cut, so that we're saving battery life on all of those fixtures.
Smart, yeah.
One thing I think I do it a little differently to you guys. Very similar to Phil with my banks. My banks are where I say where I am. So I'm on location, or I'm on stage 27, or I'm on stage 17, or so on and so forth. And then, you know, say we're on stage 27 and we're in the courthouse set, I'll build a courthouse cue list. And that's where I record, you know, all of my scenes, you know, scene 1 alpha, scene 1 bravo, so on and so forth. And I'll start each day with what I call the start of day cue, which is usually the last scene from the day before, you know, load cue such and such, put that into the program or record that becomes my start of day cue. And so as opposed to having a cue list for each day, I just build a master cue list for that set. So, you know, if we want to look at something we did a month ago, it's like, what day did we shoot that on? Oh, we shot it on the 15th. Okay, cool. Scroll up to the 15th. What was the scene number? Okay, you know, and then it's like, select the fixtures you want, load at cue, whatever, bang, there it is. This is one of the other things I really love about the console is the load functionality and how powerful it is. You know, give me that color from that scene on that day on that light, and it's just easy.
Yeah, there's probably, I mean, you need to be able to recreate something at any time if you work on a movie set, because you may have to go back and it has to be very exact.
Yeah.
You know, for continuity, you can't just be all over the place. So.
Well, and I mean, that's a big part of the job is managing your show file and managing your cue lists. And one of the things I really like about ONYX is it's really easy to lay things out however you want. You can label it however you want. You can do all these things that just make it really easy, you know, to be able to put comments into cue lists. And, you know, I often find sometimes if we're working on 2 sets on the same stage at once, sometimes it's just easier to record the little splinter unit thing into my existing main cue list, and I'll just put a note on the side. You know, the main part of that particular cue might be scene 1. The note says, you know, scene X35 tells me that it's splinter unit doing scene 35, and just you can reference stuff that way.
Yeah.
All right. Let's talk about something a bit different, actually, is hardware. You know, obviously there's a lot of programming going on, but you also have to show up with your kit, and, you know, all of you have different kits that you bring with. So I think it'd be interesting to talk about it a little bit, you know, how you have, what sizes do you bring on different stages, maybe, you know, show what you own yourself and why you picked it, or, you know, why is that console or that size console the right thing. So I know, Phil, you have a little video prepared. So
I do, yeah. Let me see here if I can
look at that.
Call up that. There we go, and I'll just try to narrate through this. So this is, you guys can see that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is one of my main set carts that I use on location. This is usually one that stays on stage. It consists of a wing. I've got a PC in this little unit here, and then I use my laptop either as a redundant backup, or I can use it as a remote console interface via wireless network that I set up. This is a smaller cart. This is my location cart that I use. That's got a little bit of everything on it. It's got optos built in. It's got down here, it's got my little optos. It's got, I've got wireless access points set up on here as well, so that I can take control of things. And this is the other great thing that I really love about ONYX is the scalability. this last season on a Netflix show, we were going into these crazy houses in Beverly Hills where we were shooting on location, but it was very tight spaces, very compact spaces, but I still needed to take control of fixtures. So I built this little shelf piece that basically connects to a preemie stand, and it's a laptop with my key, my programmable key functions here. And then I've got a 2-universe DMX dongle that I throw into a wireless, and I can basically just pick this up and walk it around to any room on set and flash through fixtures and, you know, take control of sky panels and the whole thing. So I can run it literally just off of a small little desktop piece, which is great. And DPs and gaffers love it because I don't have to drag my whole cart, you know, through the middle of the living room of the $8 million mansion. This is one of the distro racks that I built recently that's got a couple of EN12s in it. It's got some optos. I've got a Netgear switch there that I use both for hardlining and for wireless network as well. And I've got a couple of these that travel with me from location to location. Then I also recently built a 4-universe antenna array out of some of the light net CRMX transmitters. And basically this just goes with me on set. It's got a junior spud, so it sits right down into a stand, and we can move that anywhere on set, and I can take control of anything wirelessly that I need to. And then one of the other custom pieces that I built is this little guy that basically straps to my location cart. And it's got a number of the 2-universe DMX dongles in it. This is basically just a glorified USB hub, but it allows me to program off of the wing. I can put my touch screen panels in here and the whole deal, and then it just boxes up and goes with me. When I don't have access to, you know, my networking stuff, this works great for just a down and dirty location rig. And obviously, you know, all of these ports are assignable and addressable depending on what universe you want to run things out of. But that's kind of my deal, and seems to work well for the work that I do.
Great. Well, thanks for sharing that. That's actually really fun to see. I like that you have some Netron stuff already on there.
Absolutely.
Just
Good stuff.
fairly new, so that's great to see.
Yeah.
Sharky, what's like your setup?
Okay, so I still have my original M1, which I kind of now sort of keep as a backup. Last year, I bought one of the NX wing rigs and also an NX4. I think the NX4 is by far my favorite. I just love the layout and the way it works. And I'll show you a photo of my rig here. Where are we? There we go. So this is my main on-set cart with the NX4 on it. This is actually the same cart I was using with the M1. You guys see all that?
Yep.
Okay, so that's basically the NX4 with one 24-inch external screen. You also see I've got on the right side there, I've got what I would call a dumb screen. It's just a monitor, but I've got my Surface Pro plugged into it, which I usually have there for doing Vectorworks stuff or
Is that a touch screen on the left, the large one that you have there?
Yeah, that's a Acer. I'm not sure what it is. I used to run my ELO there, but when I went to NX4, I bought a couple of new Acer touch screens. They're actually really good. They're like a 24-inch. And yeah. If you look there, you can see on that screen on the left side, I've got my group screen, and then on the right side, I've got my preset screen. And then on the main screen on the console, I have a QList programmer and QList value screen. And sometimes I'll network in the Surface and run that third screen as a live output or something like that. Although like as Phil displayed earlier, using putting percentage values on your 2D plans kind of means you don't necessarily need to have a dedicated live output screen. Yeah. I've been getting into that more recently. But yeah, that's my NX4, and then in the bottom there I have a rack with a printer and data distribution gear and network switches and UPSs and all that sort of stuff. So That's actually a fairly big cart that takes up a lot of real estate, but it's really mobile. It'll go anywhere. It has pretty much everything I need. And, you know, I got a couple of Pelicans down the bottom with networking gear and additional bits and pieces. So that's the main one that I use on stage the most. And then my NX wing rig
So actually, how many total systems do you have? That's
well, I have the M1, I have the NX4, I have the NX wing, and then I have a couple of NX DMXs that I can run off.
like 4 or 5 different sets you could do almost at the same time. Like this?
Yeah, I could probably do 6 at once if I really had to.
Phil, how many kits do you have in total now?
I'm able to do 4. I've got 2 wings. I've got a laptop that runs the M Touch and the M Play. And then I have a second laptop that can either be standalone or I could use to run redundant backups on everything else. But I can, yeah, I mean, I could spread out and basically run 4 different sets with the hardware that I've got right now.
Great.
Let me show you this one. This is the... So this is the NX wing rig. Obviously got the wing. I got 2 more of the Acer touchscreens. That system's actually run off an Intel NUC i7. And that's the one that I basically throw on a standard Hollywood, what they call a double-decker cart. It's usually used for distribution or lights, all this sort of stuff, but it's almost the perfect size for this rig. You know, you can roll it on a truck, roll it in. This is actually taken in a hospital. We just put it on the freight elevator and just roll it upstairs. But yeah, everything's shock mounted. Takes me about 5 minutes to pull it all out of the cases and get it up and running. And this is actually the one that I've been using sort of the most because I really like having the 2 big touch screens for just, you know, maybe my eyes are starting to go, I don't know, but having the 2 big touch screens just makes the workflow much quicker.
Yeah, with the wing, you have a 128 universe dongle actually sitting there. So they have the horsepower. I mean, some of the NUCs are pretty incredible. They have like i7s in them.
Yeah, that one's i7. I think it's i7 16 gigabytes, which is kind of overkill. But I was like, you know what? If you're going to go in hard.
Yeah, well, with Dylos too. With Dylos,
right.
it makes a big difference.
Yeah, this is kind of what I considered would become my sort of Dylos workstation, just because it's got so much grunt under the hood. So yeah, and I mean for the, I think that system all up cost me about $6,000 to build or something.
Yeah, so that's the other great thing is price point on Obsidian is just, it's out of control. For what you're able to get and the hardware and the power that's behind it. I mean, you know, obviously these are pro rigs, right? These are professional systems that you get for a fraction of what, you know, any other of the other console manufacturers are offering, which is great.
So Tommy is actually sitting right in his own trailer with all his kit, where Chalkies is all locked up somewhere in the locker. And Phil, you got a little bit of stuff behind you there, but
yeah,
Tommy has all the toys with him there. So you gonna give us a little tour of what you got there?
Yeah, so I am in this is the dimmer trailer, and I'm gonna unplug some of my external monitors here, and hopefully
still see ya.
Stay up on the screen. So yeah, this is the dimmer trailer, and I've got everything in here. This is my stage cart. Toyed around with it. I actually have this monitor that sits flat, which is great for the 2D plan. I don't know. I've come to really like having my monitor set up that way. It's got 3 monitors. Cool. The i7, and this is the M2 PC. I also have a network server rack. Also has a computer, an i7 NUC built into it. This can either operate from here inside the trailer. I can cable out to it, or put it inside the stage. It's got the eNode 12 in it, or the EN12 in it. As well as XNet and SACN or ArtNet network switches. Then I have a portable case that has the eNode 8 in it, battery backup, some Ethernet ports, a great little case just to take around and set out if you need more universes somewhere further away. And then outside, let me open the back door here, is, oh, it's coming back. This is my set cart that goes on the truck with us. It's got the NX wing mounted inside of a Pelican case. Also with the Nook, the same 24-inch touchscreen, monitors to watch what the camera is seeing. Also have an 8-port PoE, network switch, the Lumen Radio TX2, an eNode 4 on the side. And it also carries all of our, several of our Astera tubes, just for quick grabbing, Helio tubes. All the ports from the NX are ported through to the back, as well as some HDMI, USBs, things like that. I use a system from RC4 Wireless. It's a 900 megahertz wireless DMX system. Has about a mile range to it. And we've modified their little receivers. This is what we would put on sky panels, anything that we need to put DMX. It's got USB, DMX port. And, you know, with that, you got about a mile range for lights and condors, or works through walls really well. It's a great little tool for location work.
Nice.
I think we all have trailer envy now. This is a kit you got
I was
there.
going to say I've got EN12 envy. I think you and Phil bought them all. I couldn't get any.
All right.
Yeah, just so people that don't know, EN12 is a product, also part of Obsidian. We launched the Netron line late last year, and looks like you guys jumped right into it, which is great.
Yeah, it's a good product. I've got 6 of the EN4s at this stage. These two have all the EN12s. So I couldn't get any, but really, really good networking devices. I was using the 6 that I've got on the last show that I was doing that I can't talk about. Sorry. And they're great. Rock solid. The user interface is really good. The ability to control them from the console was phenomenal.
That's huge.
It just kind of goes to our workflow really well. And the fact that you've got some guy on the set, 500 feet away, and he's like, oh, I need port 4 to be universe 7. And you're just like, yeah, cool. Click, 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 done. As opposed to trying to walk him through how to do it, or, here's a set of instructions. This is how you do it. Or it's just, okay, log in, node 7, port 4, universe 7, done. Okay.
Right. However, I got to say that even if you have to go to the box and do it, the onboard menu, it's pretty intuitive. You don't have to, you know what I mean? It's like even if you have a little bit of knowledge in how to set up a node, it's really quick. Even if you have to go and do it yourself, I love the way it's laid out. It makes a lot of sense.
Well, I guess with the EN12, since it's so generous in ports, it almost becomes like a hybrid, node and splitter, because you can just set up multiple ports to be, repeating one, or it's, you can just, they also the price point is quite good, so you can spread them around the set, bolt them on a wall somewhere.
Yeah.
And just have lots of availability without having to run extra cables.
And the fact that you've thrown gigaswitches in them, you don't have to have an external switch. It used to be if you were running the old Ether to DMX boxes, you'd have to, attach an Ether switch to it as well, depending on where the node was placed. And now it's all just plug and play, which is awesome.
Well, and the PoE functionality is huge.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't buy any switches now that aren't PoE. Because again, with our work, it could be, we need a condor, 300 feet away in that field over there, and just run one PoE line plug in the node, plug in the lights, you're good to go.
Mm-hmm.
That leads me into my next topic, really, which is like remote control. You know, you brought in a little bit that you had surfaces that you may use. Maybe you know, some of you may use a iOS app or something else. You know, like how do you deal with remotely communicating with your systems and you out, you know, in the middle of a set and you don't have access to your desk? Like, what's your workflow there?
I carry a wireless network with me for each one of my setups. So depending on where I'm in, depending on what stage I'm on, I started out using the app. The app was great, but I found that a lot of times it loses connectivity because of all the wireless that's on set these days. So I'll take my secondary laptop and use it as you know, as a remote surface if I need to. I think Tommy's got the setup, and I think Chalky's probably a little more advanced than my stuff is. I'm finding that the small bit of remote stuff that I have to do, my rig works just fine. But I think later on down the road, I'm going to have to step up my game a little bit, because after seeing these guys' rigs, no competition.
It used to be, you know, when M Series first came out, the remote app was really good, and I used to use it a lot for testing and tuning and call to Matthias don't know what happened then. But you know, I used to use the app a lot, and I always carry a router on my car and create my own network for that sort of stuff. Other times, you know, I'll use the same network to log into Surface as a client, you know, and because you can just run your show file on the Surface and it becomes the second console on the network, which is great. But the problem with that is we're getting to the point where there's so much Wi-Fi traffic on sound stages with video playback and sound and the internet and all this sort of stuff that it's becoming less and less reliable unless you've got the mother of all routers that crushes everything else. What I've actually found has been pretty cool.
Any advice there, just to chime in? There's like certain router brand that you have found that works better?
Yeah, I use Netgear stuff. I think mine's a Netgear, and I try and run in the 5G range if I can. But then you have, you know, some range issues with that.
Anybody using Ubiquiti or Unify? That's what I've been using at home. I've seen that actually quite a bit around.
I've used Ubiquiti for ArtNet transmission, but not for use for my own network. The other thing that's really cool about the Surface is you just get a USB to Cat6 adapter and you can just log into your network, and you know, you're on a cable, but it's instant and it doesn't drop out.
Yeah.
Maybe that gigabit switch in the back of the node is then helpful if that's around the corner of your set anyway. Just run a short little line and you're in the middle of the set, you do your thing and you undock it again. So I guess
but I mean, having that remote access is really good. Say you've got an actress that's turning on a light switch and you can't have line of sight. You can kind of be there with your phone or your tablet or your Surface or whatever and trigger those cues and do all that sort of stuff. It's really helpful.
Yeah, but maybe explain for people that are not familiar with ONYX, you know, the remote that you have on a Surface tablet is like, it's identical to the console. That's like one thing I think is really unique to this, that the scaling of the UI it's the same wherever you go. If it's a tiny tablet, a big console, everything looks exactly the same.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the really strong things about the platform is the fact that how it looks on my PC or how it looks on my Surface or how it looks on my NX4 or how it looks on my NX wing rig is exactly the same. It just transfers over pretty much seamlessly from one platform to the other. So I can build a show file on my laptop at home, and I know that I'm going to load it into the console and it's going to look exactly the same as when I built it, you know, in my office.
Yeah, and you don't have to tweak windows or, you know, layouts or anything like that. It just transfers from, you know, from one entity to the next, which is great.
Okay, that's great. Let's see. There's actually a couple of questions that came in, so maybe I should pick up some of those. One was a bit on the business side of this. You own all that kit, and that's part of you going on a set, right? That's not like you rent it from a rental house and they provide you this. This is your own personal gear.
Yeah, I have my own little company, and my equipment is rented as a separate entity from me. I walk onto a film set, I'm an employee, but my company rents equipment to the production company.
Right. And we're finding too, depending on contracts and deals and all that kind of stuff, because there are preferred equipment vendors on a lot of the sound stages, on a lot of the lots, you sometimes have to rent to that entity and then they'll rent it to the production company. There's a lot of that stuff that kind of goes on. I try to stay out of that as much as I can. I like to just deal with the production company one-on-one, because I think we can create a better partnership that way, and I can offer things from my own personal stock that a lot of rental companies won't be able to do. And if they do, they're going to charge you more for it. For me, I try to lump sum it all together and just do, you're going to get, X amount of gear on this sound stage to drive this. And if you have to add, 10 more lights down the road, it's fine. The infrastructure is there. I'm not going to charge you more for adding another node or anything like that. And I find that production managers are tending to find that a little easier to work with within budgets, as opposed to try to line item everything. But everybody's different. Every production company's different. Every sound stage is different. Every rental company's different. So you really kind of have to feel it out and see what's going to work best for the overall production. But a lot of the production managers that I've been talking with liken the lighting console and the programmer rig to what an audio guy brings on set, right? Because he's got his own cart, he's got his own boom, he's got his own mics, he's got his own mixer, his own recorder, all of that kind of stuff. And so, so a lot of the lighting programming techs now are kind of feeling along those same lines, where we're bringing in our own infrastructure. We're going to give you everything you need to drive the lights on this particular soundstage or this particular location. And it seems to be more user-friendly when it comes to budgets and getting producers to sign off on the price tag.
Okay. Well, Tommy, if I look at your thing there, it's very personalized what you built there, and it's like your own package, and everything is exactly how you want it. Yeah, so I guess it would be quite difficult to bring this in and like rent it from somebody, because if you do a concert tour and you need your console, you do 2 consoles or record notes. That's pretty standard. But I guess everyone on the motion picture side has like its own little personal way, and that's probably true for all the departments. Audio and camera, everybody has their own way of doing it.
Yeah.
And you come with it, and people, almost hire you. They don't really care maybe as much about the gadgets you bring. They just want this to work.
As long as you can make it work. Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, when I go to a show, this comes with me, specifically if it's a stage-based show. The trailer gets parked outside the stage and kind of keeps all my gear in it. We have to itemize stuff more than a package deal where I live. It's all with me, and so if they need something, it's oh, can we add this on for today, or it's there if I need it, which is always great. So.
Do you find yourself having to bring in a lot of infrastructure nowadays, that you become sort of the network guy on a set, and they're like, can you, run some network here and this and plug in that? Like, how much networking is actually part of what you do nowadays?
It depends. If it's a mostly location show, there's not a ton of networking going on.
Right.
If it's a big stage build, we do a lot of networking. The server rack that I have gets set up inside. If you notice, it had 2 switches in it. I will run parallel runs of Ethernet, so one that's doing XNet and one that's doing either ArtNet or SACN. I had always been SACN. I'm starting to get more into wanting to use ArtNet, but it's all personal preference. They both work about the same, except for you don't have the RDM yet on SACN.
Right.
But yeah, then with that networking, I would typically have the server set up somewhere. It's running the main part of the show. It's doing all the DMX outputting, and then I can wheel around my other console and plug it in anywhere that I've done a Ethernet drop. So I can get a better vantage point of where we're shooting, and control from there. One thing I wanted to go back and touch about though was we were talking about the remote controlling. So obviously XNet is a big thing for me, having the console directly plugged into the other console and controlling it from there. But I've started now using, it's called Google Remote Desktop, which is a pretty cool feature. So right now, actually doing the webinar, I'm on my MacBook, and I have got Google Remote Desktop going. So the cart you saw outside is what's actually running the show. That when I keep screen sharing here, that's what I'm pulling up, is that console outside. So it's very easy to now come in here. I've got my server, Surface, ONYX cart, the portable unit's the one outside, so I can come log into it. The cart out there has a cellular card on it, so no matter where it is, I can always pull it up. Let's see, I logged in from my phone. It might as well, so it might kick me out of here.
The internets don't like you today.
You find that when you do multiple stages in LA, guys out there, like you find that you try to network stages together too, so you can do it all from one place? Or you...
Depends where you are. I mean,
it depends on where you are.
Some stages have that infrastructure where you can literally link stage to stage to stage through the on-site network, but that takes some coordination. And depending, I mean, I just try and have a network system on the stage itself that I just tap into. I always make sure I've got 2 or 3 drops that I can just walk in, plug the console into, and go.
Right.
It depends on the lot you're on and what their infrastructure is and how much it's going to cost to get onto their network. And I mean, you can do this stuff, but it just depends on the scale of the show you're doing.
But then, like I visited you on a set at Paramount not that long ago, and so you just drop notes around different corners of a building or whatever they constructed.
Yeah, I mean, usually what I'll do is I'll put a node rack up in the perms up in the ceiling, and run DMX from that. And if I need node on the floor, we'll just drop Cat6, because there's what you would call a central data point, and everything spiders out from there and either drops into the rig at high level or drops down to the floor to other nodes or other switches or whatever, so that it just gives you instant access to what you're doing. I mean, the scale that we're doing stuff with LEDs now has really changed the way we work, not just in the way we're using more color as opposed to just white, but also networking is becoming a major part of the infrastructure. And it's getting to the point where film lighting programmers almost have to be IT techs just to work all this stuff out.
Yeah, exactly.
But,
or your DMX tech, if you're lucky to have one, with you on a set. It's funny because I very much liken it to, a gaffer having a best boy. A programmer really needs a DMX tech. So anytime you're bringing a programmer onto a show, you really need to have someone there that understands the console, understands IP addresses, understands how to address nodes. Because troubleshooting, we can't be in 2 places at once. And like Chalky was saying, depending on the size of the soundstage, the last couple of shows I've done, I take everything up to the catwalks, up to the perms. I'll take nodes up there, and then I'll drop a couple of Cat6 lines on either side of the stage so that I can roll my cart to wherever I need to, plug in, have access to the network, and then I'm kind of off and running. And it just makes sense to do that. But yeah, we're hoping that in the next year or so, we've been talking with our local here in LA to try to get that job classification as DMX tech on more shows, just because of the fact that, again, like Chalky was saying, there's so much information now that's coming out of the lighting desk You really need someone there that's kind of dedicated to help you ring those things out. And the other thing is too, is when you've got rigging days, right, where you've got a separate rigging crew that's going to go and set up, let's say, tomorrow's location, you can have that DMX tech go with that rigging crew and kind of help them address fixtures and get all of that stuff sussed out ahead of time, so that when your first unit programmer comes in, all of that information is already there, and it's literally just a plug and play kind of thing.
Yeah, and the live music, it's pretty common to have systems tech for the audio side.
Yes.
He deals with all setting up and, does all the infrastructure of the PA. And the lighting side, you have a front of house tech or a data tech actually nowadays that deals with all that and is in charge of the infrastructure.
And this is where the LED and networking thing has really kind of changed this up. I mean, my last show, which I can't say anything about, we had a 12-man electric rigging crew. We had 3 guys full-time just as data techs on rigging who would go in and set up all the digital lighting and all that sort of stuff. And one of their guys was also my rigging programmer. And then I also had a full-time on-set DMX tech who was just there to troubleshoot on-set fixtures and run the console when I had to go to the bathroom. But, as the shows get bigger and as we have more LED lights, that's going to become more prevalent. And one of the things that I really like about ONYX, my on-set tech was just sort of getting into programming himself. And I was like, oh, come and have a look. I'll show you how ONYX works. And he was really into it and picked it up really quickly. So that's one of the things I like about it. It's easy to teach newcomers sort of how it works, and it's just intuitive.
Do you find that the networking part of the console works pretty easy? Is it like easy to set up, or is it complicated?
It's not hard. It's not like you've got to go into a bunch of sub menus and assign a bunch of stuff and then put in all your IP addresses and do all that sort of stuff. It's, especially with the Netron stuff, it just goes, oh, hello, I'm here. And it recognizes it all and off you go. That's one of the things I really like about the platform, is that network integration stuff is really straightforward.
Tommy, and your setup there, you find that all reliable when you set that up in like these larger spaces and you have your racks and you communicate with it? Does it all work well?
It does work well. I've had a couple times that it's crashed on me, but it happens. But it was nothing more than my remote computer would not connect, or it dropped connection, and I just walked to the server one and can operate it from there until I get the other one back online. So it's never been a big deal where things just didn't work. But as far as ease of use for it, I think if you grasp basic networking things, you can set up your Wi-Fi router at your house. You can pretty much set this up as well. One of the reasons why when I first started kind of getting into it using SACN is because it is easier to set up. You don't have to worry about IP addresses, and you can go on the node and just say, okay, this port's Universe 7, and that's it. Now with Neutron and being able to do a lot of it from the console, that's made it even easier, because I can do it there. I don't have to rely on somebody else, running out and putting up a node up in the truss or something like that. They just got to plug it in. And I can change the ports in whatever universe from the console, which is great.
Yeah, I think like you were saying, if you have a basic knowledge of networking, I think it's fairly easy to navigate. Some of the problems I've had are, of course, cheap cables, right? Production providing, crappy Cat 6 or Cat 5 or whatever, and not doing necessarily EtherCon, which I'm trying to push for. I made a purchase late last year on a show that I did and bought a bunch of real EtherCon that makes solid connections, because when your whole show is based on that tiny little connector that's going into your, going into your console or going into your port. If that thing fails, then, obviously you've got issues. But as far as the structure of the software and everything, never had a problem with it, being able to navigate and have things talk to each other easily.
I'm happy to hear that. Well, we try to make the networking part, straightforward. We don't want to send people to networking school just to connect two consoles to each other as a tracking backup. When we had the same approach on Netron, we tried to make this, like my goal was that somebody calls me within 60 seconds on a phone call, I can walk them through to reset the thing, set it to an ARPANET address and have exactly the port numbers you want.
Yeah.
Because you're gonna work with people that that don't know that product necessarily, and you need to be able to walk them through quickly. And that's something we really try to simplify this as much as possible. And there's a bit of the old Ether DMX in there conceptually.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've still got my E2D8 and it works great, but it's an old bit of hardware.
It has held up well for its age.
Very well, very well.
Great. So let's have there's a couple of other questions that came in. One was actually a bit more personal thing, is like, how did you get into this business actually? And I got, was some people asked, if I want to be in this, I want to program in this world, some tips and tricks, like who to talk to and how to get part of this family of people?
In my case, it came down to luck. I happened to be in the right place at the right time. And I brought a certain skill set that was required. If you want to get into the film industry, it's kind of like, it's almost like who you know. And in LA, it's pretty hard to break into the union here, but it can be done. It's just a question of, and it's much easier nowadays with the advent of Facebook and LinkedIn and places like that. You can meet people who are in the business and start chatting to them. And like any other industry, it's all about the network. So the more people you know, the more chance you have of getting hired, the more chance you have of getting your days to get into the local that you want to be in. It's just about putting yourself out there and saying, this is who I am, this is what I can do. Yeah. Does my skill set fit your needs? Great, let's do a job together. Having said that, in Los Angeles, there's still a lot of non-union work that happens, but everything that's really of any large scale in Los Angeles is union. So again, it's about having that unique skill set and having the skills that will get you hired and that will get you in.
Yeah. And it's, it's only getting more complicated, right? So there's only going to be more of a need for guys with, tech brains and, programming skills and all that. It's not like just going in and, pushing a fader up on a stage and turning a bunch of, 10Ks on. You can't fire up a 360 unless it's addressed correctly and unless it's in the right mode and unless it's got the right IP address and all that kind of stuff. So having that skill set is great. For me, again, like Chalky was saying, it's who having good friends. Thank you, Ed. Ed Motz is the one who called me out a couple of years ago and got me on a show that that went union. I was able to get all my days and all of that. And I had tried earlier on. Well, let me go back because I was a local 728 guy way back in the 90s, and I did a couple of years, and then I went off and started my own thing and got back into doing more live event stuff. So I let my dues go. So I'd been out of the union for a bunch of years. And then a couple of years ago, I had started reconnecting with some of those guys, and they were saying, man, now would be a really great time for you to come in because we really need a lot of programming and we need guys that understand all this stuff because the gear is now starting to move from live events into film and TV. And so I'd started kind of piecemealing it together, and I had a few days here and a few days there, and I had done some permit work and the whole thing, and then couldn't get all my 30 within the time frame that I needed. So I let that slip. And then again, my buddy Ed called me and says, hey, we got the show going on. We think it's going to go. you know, you can get all your days, and it was great. It was a, you know, it was a wonderful thing to be able to get back into it again. But it really does come down to who you know, what the needs are at the current time, because a lot of times when there's location work that's been fleeing from LA that's in other parts of the country, LA then loses a lot of their core people to location work. So there's comes times where, you know, there's more of an opportunity to bring permit players in when there's lots of work going on, because the need is just there. But it really is just staying in touch with people and letting people know that you're available, and, you know, just playing nice with others and doing good work, and, you know, making sure you know what you're talking about when you get the call.
I guess with this shift to more and more advanced technology, that probably opens up opportunities for, you know, new people
Absolutely.
to also come in, and because the work is getting more than it used to be, it is more complex. You need more people to manage all this.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. And here in LA, especially, sorry, Chuck, I'll let you, here in LA, you know, there's a number of different unions that you can go into as a programmer. You know, the Local 600, you can go in as a media server operator. Local 33 is a lot of live event stuff that goes on, anything that goes on in a union theater here in LA. And then, of course, 728, you know, is film and TV specifically. But there's a lot more options, at least here in LA, to get those programming skills out.
Tommy, any thoughts from your end there? You're like in a very different part of the world there.
Yeah.
So here we don't have a bunch of different unions. Here it's IATSE 491, and it covers basically everybody but camera and director. And it's for North Carolina, South Carolina, and Savannah, Georgia, which, you know, we fall under the Area Standards Agreement, which is basically everywhere but LA.
or New York.
Or New York, yeah. And so, yeah, it is all who you know. And I started out, my dad is a gaffer in the film business, and so I did go to college, though. I went to North Carolina School of the Arts for film, dabbled a little bit in it. The film industry completely died here. So I went and got what I call a normal job for a while. And then when it started picking back up is when I kind of jumped back into it. And, you know, the technology end of it is definitely, you know, learning that is definitely a huge selling point to getting into this industry. It's very quickly evolving, the technologies that we use here. And, you know, a lot of people aren't keeping up, don't care to keep up with what's going on, and it's opening the doors for new people to get in. Obviously, the union is a great way to start getting in. You know, when we are looking for people, that's one of the first calls, you know, is to the union and who's available. So I think, you know, kind of getting in that way, and I believe here it covers some theater stuff as well. So we have called theater people in before and concert demo board operators in before for when we do big performances and things like that. I did a show in Atlanta called Star, and we had huge musical performances in the show, and I just did not have the time to do any of the programming and sit down and compose a show for it. So anytime we would have one of those, and we were typically having 2 per episode, we would outsource that so I could stay on set and do the day-to-day lighting of actors and whatnot. And in a concert or venue type, demo board operator would come in and run those time-coded performances.
Right.
Which was,
we're about up on our time here. Want to give each of you like a minute for a little closing thoughts, you know, about, you know, this is ONYX on set, maybe something else that you know, wanted to mention about why you chose ONYX, or like, how, what, if, why. So Chalky, we'll start with you.
Okay. Thanks everyone for coming. It's good to see some old friends in the attendees list today. For me, choosing ONYX was about the best console that I could afford at the time, because I didn't want to go old school and go whole hog 2 or get into the new hog 3, which was a bit buggy and all that sort of stuff, and having the ability to pull on the brain power of the guys in my market. It was pretty easy to go with the M1 because it looked like a good solid package, and 10 years later it's still going strong. And just to see the development in the platform over that time, and the customer support over the years. I mean, I've had Matthias on speed dial since day one. There was no manual back then, so it was like third day I was like, hey man, how do I do this? What does this button do? Okay, cool, thanks, click. There was a couple of months of that, but these days, with where it's going with the networking stuff, with Dialos, with all that, it's going leaps and bounds. And just for me, having a background in a lot of other consoles, I think ONYX is just the most intuitive, most affordable, easiest to use sort of platform out there that'll do the sort of stuff that we do every day. I mean, if I was doing American Idol or The Voice, I might want a different console. But for what I do on a daily basis, I think ONYX is the best console for me, and it does what I need it to do. So that's about all I got.
Great. Phil?
Yeah, no, I agree. Actually, I want to jump back because there was one correction. I misspoke when I was talking about the unions. It's not 600 that does media servers here in LA. It's Local 476. Thanks, Ed, for the catch. I appreciate it. For me, it was all about familiarity and being comfortable. And because of my history, starting with the Martin desks, with the Maxis, and with the M1, just staying on the platform when it became ONYX, to me, it was like coming home. It was a familiar thing. And I think lighting consoles are like anything else. There's not one perfect brand or one perfect piece of equipment that does everything. I think it really comes down to the programmer, and if you can make that light blue, I think that's the biggest thing. And yeah, of course there are, there's more complexities that are involved with it the deeper you dive into it, but I think it needs to be the right tool for the right job. And again, what you're comfortable with and what you're quick on. And for me, it was kind of a no-brainer. Yes, the price point helps, because when you don't have the money to invest in a ton of stuff, you're able to get a lot for your money when it comes to the ONYX brand. And again, it's all pro gear, and it's all reliable, it's all user friendly, and again, having the customer support is great. Like Chalky was saying, I was calling Matthias, back in the day when I was sitting on the Maxis, and how do you do multi-patch, and he'd return the call right away. So having that support and having that partnership, I think, is great. And they give it to everybody. It's not just, the guys that, that buy all this cool stuff. It's, it's anybody that's sitting down on a PC and wondering how you do this and do that. So yeah, for me, it was all just about ease and familiarity with the brand.
Okay. Tommy, any parting thoughts from your end?
Yeah, I mean, ONYX has been great for me. It's, ever since I got the phone call from Chalky saying, you got to try this thing out. I think it's going to be perfect for you. And, I downloaded the software for free, and within a couple minutes, my mind was made up that this was definitely the route I was going to go. The user interface is amazing. And even just to see how much it's changed in the little bit of time that I've been using it, with the introduction of Dialos, it's, which there's still so much to learn about it. But I think it's going to be a huge game changer in how we do things. And I look forward to seeing how it progresses. Lots of new things coming out. The Neutron line is great, and can't wait to start investing a little more into that. One thing that I really am excited to play with, which I haven't had a chance to yet, is the contact triggers on the back of the Neutron node. The 12 has it for turning on house lights and things like that. And so yeah, a lot of cool features. It's been great.
Great. Well, really appreciate all of you joining us here. Next week, we're going to have the same panelists, and it's going to be like a hands-on training. So we're going to try to really show you the workflows of this. So we're going to probably take one of those 2D plans or build a little Google overhead view and like walk you through step by step how to do that, how to patch, how to what options are there, especially in the 2D plan. I think there's a lot of interesting things. And then maybe we'll try to build a little poor man setup and build a little dialos thing and show you. So the next webinar next week is really like an ONYX training, but we want to really focus it on the specific workflow of motion picture and television. So that was the idea for next week. So yeah, thanks again to Chalky, Phil, and Tommy. I really appreciate that you take the time to come out here and spend it with us.
Thanks everyone for coming and
I hope it was
hanging out with us.
informative for everybody out there. We'll make this available as a recording, probably after we do part 2, then we put it all together on our website, and you can re-watch this. And yeah, with that, thank you very much. Stay safe out there, and hopefully we'll see you again next week.
Yeah. Tommy, tell your dad I said g'day.
Will do.
Thanks, guys. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks all.